Angry voices, waving flags. On December 7th, Russia's Siberian city of Irkutsk erupted in protest over a sudden tax hike. As VAT surged to 22%, citizens begged their protector Tsar for mercy, trapped in a chilling contradiction. Entrepreneurs from 4 regions joined the uprising online, warning that small businesses now face collapse. Pressure is rising, loyalty is cracking, and across Russia's frozen heartland, economic anger is turning into something far more dangerous. Protests spread across Russia as anger grows over new tax hike. On December 7, 2025, protests broke out in the Siberian city of Irkutsk as residents took to the snowy streets to oppose a sharp tax increase. The demonstration carried a striking contradiction. While people protested the decree, they chanted, "For Putin," even though the very order they opposed had been personally signed just days earlier by Vladimir Putin on November 28th, raising the value-added tax to 22%. Despite the direct link between the tax hike and the president's signature, many demonstrators still appealed to him as their protector Tsar, begging for his intervention as if he were separate from the decision itself. Video footage shows Russian flags waving in the freezing streets, unified chants of "Vladimir Vladimirovich, use your right hand," pleading for mercy. Between these images are clips of Putin laughing, an eerie contrast that highlights the deep loyalty many citizens still feel, even as economic pressure tightens around them. The protests did not remain confined to Irkutsk. Business owners from Novosibirsk, Chelyabinsk, Tomsk, and Udmurtia joined the movement remotely through video calls, urging the government not to crush small and medium-sized businesses under the new tax burden. These entrepreneurs warned that the higher VAT could push many already struggling companies into collapse, especially in Russia's regional economies where margins are thin and costs are rising. So far, Kremlin has offered no response. That silence is becoming increasingly noticeable as frustration spreads across Siberia and beyond. What began as a local rally now looks like a wider signal of regional unrest, one driven not by politics alone, but by mounting economic strain. Ukrainian intelligence destroys $100 million Russian Buk M3 air defense system. On December 6th, Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, HUR, confirmed the successful destruction of a Russian Buk M3 air defense system near the occupied village of Sviatotroitska in the Zaporizhia region. The strike was carried out by operators from HUR's elite special operations drone unit known as Primary, and exclusive footage of the attack was released the same day. Notably, the operation took place on Ukraine's Armed Forces Day, adding strong symbolic weight to the mission. The Buk M3 is one of Russia's most advanced and expensive medium-range air defense systems, specifically designed to intercept aircraft, cruise missiles, and drones. Valued at approximately $100 million, the system represents a critical layer in Russia's defensive shield. Ukrainian intelligence confirmed that the target was completely destroyed, marking a significant setback for Russian air defense capabilities in southern Ukraine, and further weakening Moscow's ability to protect its occupied territories. This strike is part of a wider, highly coordinated campaign carried out by the Primary unit. Over the past 2 weeks alone, HUR reports that its operators have eliminated 8 major Russian military targets in occupied Crimea. These precision strikes have hit a wide range of high-value assets, including combat aircraft, radar systems, and critical logistics infrastructure. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the unit has successfully destroyed a Su-24 frontline bomber, an antenna housed inside a radio-transparent dome, a 39 N6 Castor 2E2 radar, an Orion unmanned aerial vehicle, two 48YA6K1 Podlet radar stations, a military cargo train, and a Ural logistics truck used to support Russian operations. HUR described these actions as part of a continuing effort to carry out the systematic demilitarization of the temporarily occupied peninsula. Russian jet bombs its own city again. Belgorod shaken by massive blast and blackouts. On December 6th, a Russian fighter jet accidentally dropped an aerial bomb on its own territory, triggering a powerful explosion in the border city of Belgorod, near the Ukrainian frontier. According to the Moscow Times, the munition fell near an electrical substation on Storozhevaya Street, instantly knocking out power across large parts of the city and its suburbs. Residents reported hearing the roar of a jet flying toward the border seconds before the blast. Notably, no air raid sirens or drone warnings were activated at the time, strongly indicating that this was a Russian internal accident rather than an external attack. The explosion carved a visible crater, damaged a truck, and shattered nearby residential buildings, spreading panic through the area in the dead of winter. Local and regional officials confirmed the destruction but avoided directly naming the source of the blast. The regional governor described it only as the result of an unidentified munition. One man was hospitalized with barotrauma from the shockwave, while traffic lights failed and electricity was cut across the city center. The careful wording used by officials has fueled public skepticism and highlighted the authorities' reluctance to acknowledge responsibility. This incident is not an isolated mistake, it is part of a disturbing and persistent pattern. Independent journalists estimate that this was at least the 133rd time in 2025 that Russian aircraft have dropped bombs on their own territory or on regions of Ukraine under temporary Russian occupation. The trend mirrors an equally alarming record from last year, when at least 165 such accidental strikes were documented in Russia's border regions. Such repeated failures point to deep systemic problems within the Russian military aviation system, including poor coordination, outdated safety procedures, and mounting operational pressure along the front lines. Ukrainian forces strike hard in the Kupiansk direction as Russian encirclement claims collapse. Ukrainian forces continue to dismantle Russian troops and equipment with methodical precision, especially along one of the most difficult sectors of the front, the Kupiansk direction in the Kharkiv region. In the latest operation, Ukrainian fighters destroyed enemy infantry units, motorcycles, vehicles, and unmanned aerial vehicles in a coordinated strike that was captured on dramatic video footage. The spectacular video was published on the Telegram channel of Ukraine's land forces and shows pilots from the 14th Mechanized Brigade executing the operation with ruthless accuracy. The caption accompanying the footage states plainly, "Kupiansk direction. Pilots of the 14th Mechanized Brigade are working accurately and mercilessly toward the enemy." The video shows the destruction of infantry, motorcycles, vehicles, and UAVs. At the same time, reports indicate that Moscow is attempting to conceal the true scale of disability among its wounded soldiers. However, the sharp increase in government spending on prosthetics exposes the magnitude of the crisis. Meanwhile, the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kyrylo Budanov, has stated that Ukraine's strikes are now causing more damage to Russia than all Western sanctions combined. In recent days, Russian officials and propaganda channels once again claimed that their forces had surrounded Kupiansk and achieved major breakthroughs on several nearby fronts. These claims were accompanied by dramatic stories of dozens of Ukrainian battalions allegedly trapped in a tightening ring. However, Ukrainian military officials flatly reject this narrative. Viktor Tregubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces Group, stated that these stories exist only in Russian imagination. According to him, Russia has been repeating tales of Kupiansk's capture for months, yet none of these claims have materialized on the battlefield. He stressed that the physical scale of the settlements in question makes such encirclement scenarios mathematically impossible. Euclidean geometry simply does not allow placing 15 battalions in a village 4 kilometers wide, Tregubov explained. There is no encirclement. Russian units are not achieving any real success near Kupiansk, and all talk of large-scale breakthroughs remains pure information fiction created for a domestic audience. He added that these false narratives were particularly useful for Moscow in late November, when Russia was trying to present imaginary battlefield gains as leverage for negotiations. As of now, Borova exists only in the announcements and dreams of Russian military bloggers, with no actual territorial changes on the ground. Despite some tactical changes, Ukraine's defensive lines in the Kupiansk direction remain stable. Russian forces have failed to advance beyond forest belts and border areas. While their public statements claim sweeping success, the real situation on the front tells a very different story. From Vovchansk to Veliki Burluk, Russian forces attempted to push along the border throughout November. They managed to displace Ukrainian units by several kilometers, but these movements did not alter the overall operational picture. According to Tregubov, these were purely local actions, not the strategic triumphs portrayed by Russian media. The situation in Vovchansk itself is more complex due to widespread destruction and Russian attempts to entrench themselves among the ruins. Despite this, Ukrainian positions in the city remain intact. Russian forces control part of the territory, making fighting difficult, but they have not achieved full control. More importantly, their activity has not resulted in any meaningful changes to the front line. Ukrainian units continue to hold key defensive points, preventing Russia from expanding its offensive into broader operations. Russian forces trapped in a kill zone as Ukraine reclaims Ivanivka in a daring counterattack. Today's most dramatic battlefield developments come from the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russian forces attempted to establish a bridgehead across the Vovcha River in order to push deeper into Ukrainian defenses. But at a decisive moment, Ukrainian troops launched a bold counterstrike, one that not only pushed the Russians back, but also placed their exposed flank under immediate threat. Ukraine's operational goal in this sector was clear: eliminate the Russian force in Ivanivka before it could entrench itself and outflank Novopavlivka. Clearing Ivanivka would remove the Russian presence from this side of the river and, once secured, turn the village into a launch point for pressure against the enemy's flank. This would isolate surrounding Russian units and sharply weaken their overall offensive potential. Ukraine's battle plan relied entirely on surprise. Tanks were brought forward to pin down Russian resistance inside the village with direct fire, while FPV kamikaze drones were deployed in the preparation phase to hunt down scattered enemy positions. This combination allowed Ukrainian infantry to methodically sweep through Ivanivka, destroying remaining resistance and restoring full Ukrainian control. Ivanivka's geography gave Ukraine a powerful advantage. The village is separated from the main Russian force by the Vovcha River. Dense fog crippled Russian drone reconnaissance while allowing Ukrainian tanks to operate more freely and provide overwhelming fire support. Topographic analysis shows that Ukrainian positions on the hills north of Ivanivka dominate the battlefield. From these heights, Ukrainian forces maintained full fire control over both the settlement and the river crossing, enjoyed superior observation, and benefited from stronger drone signal coverage. Meanwhile, all Russian supplies had to cross the river, turning logistics into a dangerous bottleneck. Russian positions inside Ivanivka were too weak and too close to the front line to permit safe crossings by armoured vehicles. As a result, assault groups became overstretched and unsupported, perfect targets for a decisive Ukrainian strike. Ukraine launched the operation before Russian troops could fully dig in. Under thickening fog, the risk from Russian drones dropped sharply, allowing tanks to operate in conditions normally considered too dangerous. Geolocated footage shows a Ukrainian Leopard 1A5 firing its 105mm cannon from a concealed position, striking concentrated Russian infantry inside the village. The tank's opening salvo killed 2 Russian soldiers and wounded several others. Immediately afterward, Ukrainian operators deployed fiber-optic FPV drones to hunt down remaining fighters one by one, plunging Russian resistance into total chaos. Once Russian positions had been softened, Marines from Ukraine's 37th Brigade descended from the surrounding hills and began clearing dugouts in brutal close-quarter combat. Small arms fire, explosives, and constant drone-delivered grenades shattered the last pockets of resistance. As a result, Ukrainian forces advanced 1.5 kilometers across a 5-kilometer-wide front, fully clearing Ivanivka and pushing Russian troops back across the Vovcha River. During the operation, 53 Russian soldiers were killed. The remaining 19, realizing that retreat was impossible and that their main force could not rescue them, chose to surrender.